Hello, in this video I'm going to be practicing to pick this Mul-T-Lock. This is a lock that my mother got me for my birthday. I believe it was purchased in 1995 according to the security card. I'm not going to share the security card because it has some personally identifiable information on it. I think it's a Mul-T-Lock classic. I don't know a lot about the Mul-T-Locks, but I think this one is a classic 5-pin and pin. I don't know what sort of security features are inside of it. I do know I've got about 2 hours of practice pick time and one broken pick in it. So it's a tough one. It's not a trivial open. This lock is made in Israel. I once purchased one in Israel, and I tried to take it apart without knowing what I was doing, and I lost pieces, and I never got it back together correctly. So before I take this one apart, I will watch some videos on it. If you're not familiar right now, but I'm sure most of you are, there is a very serious conflict in Israel with Palestine right now. A lot of people dying, a lot of Palestinians dying, a lot of Palestinian children dying. There's different stuff you can do to try to help support a ceasefire and support the wounded and starving there. There's different charities raising money for medical support. I'll put a link to the one group that'll connect you to your senators to call for a ceasefire. I've also seen in the United States sit-ins more than I've ever seen anything like that before. I think that's good. I haven't participated in those, but I think that's good. Yeah, so go ahead and raise some awareness on that, and I'll put some links in the description below to things you can look at if you're interested. I am going to try to pick this. I think I'm going to cap my video at half an hour. I don't expect to pick this. I expect this to be practice, which you can watch. And if you are familiar with picking Mul-T-Locks or dimple locks, feel free to observe and correct and comment on how I am doing this poorly, because I'm quite certain I need to practice more. One of the things I heard is that you can file the tip of your dimple pick so it's slightly more like a triangle, something like that, and it's less likely to get stuck in here. I have been doing a better job at not getting the pick stuck in here than when I very first tried, but I do still get my pick stuck in here. It's the first time I can really say I see an advantage to this half diamond, because the half diamond does not get stuck in here when I try to use it like a flag, like the hooks will. This glides through much better. But I think I'm going to try to use these flag picks and try to get, because I think in the long run this is what I need to be using. So I'm going to practice with these. One of the videos I saw suggested rotating the flag in the opposite direction you're applying the turning force. So if I'm doing counterclockwise turning force, I'll do clockwise turning with the dimple. I'm curious if y'all agree with that, those of you that have more experience. Do you really think so? Do you really think that helps? The other thing I've heard is that with the Mul-T-Locks, you can get a lot of variation between the way you're rotating with your applying tension. That makes sense to me. I've seen that with standard pen tumblers. If one's difficult to pick one way, switch it up and change the binding order. So that makes sense. I think that's all the commentary I've got right now. I really don't have any insights yet into this lock, which is sort of a shame to say after spending so much time on it, but I think a lot of it's just me getting familiar with how to use the tools in here when I'm not used to them, and just picking in a different structure. But yeah, feel free to observe, and when you see me doing something that's like, oh, that ain't right, let me know. I'm going to try to be a little more methodical with my time while I'm picking this time. Earlier when I was picking, it just sort of deteriorated into madness of like, they have a word for it, which I'm not going to use, but it was it's not really picking, it was more like random prodding. I also, my personal opinion of what I need to do that I haven't done yet is take this lock apart, look at what's inside, get a feel for what I'm jumping into, and also progressively pin it. That's always extremely helpful. It's what I teach people when I'm teaching them to pick pin tumblers, is to progressively pin things. It's really good for getting a feel for the locks. So it is most likely what I will end up doing with this lock to get better at it. So here, I feel like I've already got the pick sort of wedged in there, which is, so I could get it out, but I don't really love that, how that's happening already. And I might have some more lying around here. Oh, if you're curious about the bidding on this guy, there's the key. So to me it looks like very high in the front, very low in the middle, something in between in the back. That knowledge has not helped me yet, though. Yeah, see there, I've got the pick stuck again. It makes me not really want to use the flags. And it makes me want to use the that half diamond more. But I feel like this is what I should be practicing with. This pick seems larger, but I'm also not sure that it can get all the way in that warding right there. I'm curious if people generally, see in there it already wants to get stuck. Do people generally choose a pick that can fit all the way to the warding? Or is it something like you start off with a small one, and then if you need something that can go all the way up there, then you switch to it? I suppose I should watch more videos of people picking these. I really thought I'd have more success with it, to be perfectly honest. With the amount of time I'd put into it, I expected to have figured out some tricks or something. But I really haven't. At this point, I can definitely attest to there being I guess that canard, Kenur, I don't know, I don't know if it's pronounced like my name, but the Kenaurd dimple lock that I picked. I picked a couple of those. And I guess that they use the same style from the expired patent on this lock. But those are so much easier than this. I mean, like worlds easier. So I'm curious when I take this apart if I'll find security style pins or if it's the manufacturing tolerances. Part of me would be slightly embarrassed if it's just the manufacturing tolerances, considering how much time I've invested in it. But I don't feel like I haven't noticed any big false sets. I haven't noticed any what's the word we use? Crunchiness to it. It's very smooth. It leads me to believe, based off the bidding, that I'm most likely oversetting things. Otherwise, I would probably get it out of sheer luck at this point, to be blunt. So I am very curious what I'll find when I take it apart. But like I said, I don't want to take it apart and lose anything. I do like this lock was a gift, and I would like to get better at picking one of these. So right now I'm just sort of going back and forth on the pins. But with this, I'm not really distinguishing between like outer pin, inner pin. But if I if I go all the way to the back and I rotate, one pin feels like it's stuck. I can't tell. Can't tell. I'm assuming I'm hitting the outer pin in the back there. If I come forward, I just have a very hard time telling if I'm dealing with a outer pin or an inner pin with this tool. I'm sure that doesn't help me going through picking it. I'm not complaining, I'm just observing. Hopefully it doesn't sound like complaining. Let me go back to one of the flags. The other hot topic I was going to discuss was gun safety and gun locks, gun safes. I was going to look at a locking device for guns that I was interested in, because I think the company is putting in genuine effort where a lot of companies obviously are not. However, while playing with it, me and some other people at a tool meeting were able to see some potential issues with it, as far as how difficult it is to open, and for safety. I won't be sharing that technique right now, because I don't think it benefits anyone. Could do more damage than good at the moment. It is nice to see a company that appears to be putting genuine effort in such things. And I hope they will be able to resolve, correct, find a measure, or find a method to correct what we observed in it, as far as being able to open it. There's a rumor that it's impossible to make pick-proof locks, and that is not completely true. And I mean, I know there's a difference between, like, this Mul-T-Lock is difficult to me, but to somebody else it might be fairly trivial. But there are ways to design locks that are pick-proof. And when I mean pick-proof, I mean that you are that it's just as easy to try every possible combination to pick the lock. So essentially, you're trying every possible combination. There are methods to remove all feedback. When I say remove all feedback, if you want to be a stickler, you can be like, no, there's always some transfer of energy throughout the lock. Yeah, maybe on some, like, theoretical mechanical engineering perspective, yes, but at the same time, in the real world, there is practical ways to completely reduce the transfer of force from the components locking the lock, preventing rotation or the locking bar from moving or whatever, preventing that feedback from reaching the interactive element that the picker has access to. In very basic terms, without getting into all the details right now in this video, essentially what you do is you create stages in the lock. You create a stage where the user can interact with elements and change positions. And then you create a stage where those components that the user interacts with are no longer touching the components that are actually interacting with the locking bar. And if they are touching, the forces are applied, like, they really shouldn't be touching at all, but if they are, the forces are at least tangential to each other. So the locking bar goes this way, it's exerting a force this way. Then the surface that is in contact with anything the user can touch, the forces they need to be able to apply would be in the you need to make sure that they can't touch this component in such a manner that they can feel that force, whether it's pushing it inward or outward. Really, they shouldn't touch it at all. But if it's like one disc rotating and it's touching another disc, that can also rotate. There's probably very little force that could be transferred that way, especially if you had something like a ball bearing or something like that. I don't know that a person could genuinely feel that force, but that's assuming they're touching. You don't need them to touch, is what I'm also trying to get at. So you can completely isolate the components, like a clock, in a sense. You make stages where that, in different stages of key interaction, the components are completely isolated. Andrew McGill, I think I remembered his name correctly, does this in Enclave, a pen tumbler design that he's getting a patent for, patent pending. It looks like a very good design to me. The only issue that I've heard people bring up with his design is concerns over the wafers in the pen tumbler design. That they might be. It's possible that depending on how you built it, you could accidentally flip one of those and get the lock stuck in a locked position. But I think that's a design concern. Like I'm sure there's ways to address that or prevent that or make it very unlikely. I heard somebody else say that they thought you could make a decoder for it. I really don't understand what they were talking about, to be honest. I don't believe that's possible. Not if it's built correctly. That's one design. I put a design up that I came up with that's based on like a disc detainer style lock that I was interested in getting a patent for, but I think my lock got too complicated to actually manufacture, so I just shared the design online. But it also isolates components. And I've got a couple more designs in mind for, I think they might just become challenge locks of methods of showing that with like sesame style locks, or keys that go in. Essentially, you have the key go in, you rotate it left to set the dials or the discs, you have it rotate right to clear, or to put itself in a position where it can no longer interact with those discs, at which point some movement of the key in or out, or even just having it rotate all the way right, clears a series of gates and the locking bar can engage. And in this manner, that when these discs that have to be all the way to the right to allow that locking bar to go down and check the gates, you know that somebody can interact with them as long as you cover your gaps. Kind of like if you imagine a safe dial that's operable by a key in a way. I really need to draw them out. It's hard to describe verbally. I know it is possible. And as a lock picker, I enjoy picking locks. As a security person, it's like I know these companies can do even better. And when you start talking about, if it's a residential lock, a car lock, that's one thing. But if you start talking about protecting guns or weapons or chemicals or radioactive material or massive amounts of money or other precious items, then all of a sudden that extra effort into the lock design can seem more worthwhile. And actually worth the effort. You don't need a $30 lock. You're willing to spend the money on a $100, $200, $300, $500 lock mechanism. I've known this for a while. I remember sort of figuring out a lot of it back in high school. So I know these companies can figure it out. I'm not some lock prodigy. Other places can figure it out too. But I'd like to do a video on that at some point. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm pretty sure I've overset something. Probably those middle pins that are super low. I'm just sort of going through back and forth, pressing up on them, back and forth. And honestly, that same style, that same technique works for me on a lot of pen tumblers. But I do think I must have overset something. I haven't felt any crunching, haven't felt any false sets, nothing of that sort. At the moment, I don't feel like if I press on any of these, there's any like counter rotation. That may be because I'm just pressing on this turning tool way too hard at this point. Yeah. On the bright side, I have not gotten it stuck, so that's like, I'm pretty happy with that, especially after breaking a pick. Like, I haven't straight up broke a pick in a long time. I've bent picks. I have done that. I tend to use heavy tension. I do bend picks, but it's been a long time since I straight up broke a pick. So here, I'll show it to you. There's the damage right there. Snap that flag off. So that is a humbling experience. I'm assuming these flags are relatively easy to replace at some point. Maybe not with the same quality as these that I purchased, but I can improvise something. Oof. What was that? Didn't sound good at all. No, it did not. So these pins in the front look very loose, like they might be properly set. In the middle, I feel like, let's see here, so 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. So when I get to pin 3, I can feel it sort of resting on the bottom there. Pin 4 is really pushing down on the bottom. It doesn't feel like I'm really sort of shoving this through the bottom to get past it. the back. It's like the pins on the back are really wedged down. Coming up, oh, we just passed 30 minutes. All right, let me wrap this up. It's very easy for me to get carried away and just be here all night, so let's just go ahead and call it a night, all right? Well, if you have a Mul-T-Lock, hopefully this makes you feel a little better about that lock right there. It's definitely put up a decent fight. Decent fight for sure. I would say that it is very much winning that fight. Yeah, I'll put some links down at the bottom in the description if you're interested in how you can support either the humanitarian aid or the ceasefire. Yeah. Thank you for watching.